right, buddy. Hey, today's guest is Ryan Warriner. And I got to tell you what, I'm really excited about this because we know that communication is so important. And I think one of the challenges that we faced over the last couple of years is the lack of communication, or even sometimes maybe the overwhelming amount of communication we've been getting over Zoom or through our emails and spam. And today's guest, Ryan, is going to really help us dive into that and how to be an effective communicator, how to be an effective presenter, because we all know that we want that. That's going to help drive us to success. So, Ryan, man, thanks so much for joining us on the show today, brother.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thanks for inviting me.
Now you've got quite the resume, man. You are a professor, you at McMaster University. You're a speaker. You're an author. You're a podcast host, guy. I mean, it kind of seems like you do a lot about a lot, man.
I like to keep busy. You know, they say idle hands is the devil's best friend, so I try to avoid that.
No doubt about it, dude. I'm with you 100%. I think every time I've gotten bored, I've created another company, which is not always the best thing to get bored and do that. So, hey, I'd love to dive into what you're doing now. Obviously, I want to dive into the book, The Effective Presenter: The Winning Formula for Business Communication. But before we get into that, I'd love for you to just kind of tell people a little bit about yourself. I think you've got an amazing start to your life when you were a kindergarten teacher, and now you're talking to, well, let's just say it, probably grown-up children in a sense, with all of us adults out there. I'm sure there's a lot of things that are in common, but give everybody a little bit of your history and your past.
Sure. Yeah. So background, definitely, I grew up in Southern Ontario, and went to school in New York and as well as Ontario, so Canadian American. And I always knew I wanted to get involved in education. I wanted to help people learn how people think and come to their understandings and come to their decisions was always something that intrigued me. So I kind of followed that path, and somewhere along the way, I found a really rewarding moment in helping out children, helping out students kind of find their footing and empower themselves. So I think my first venture was guided by that, and it was in the school system. And I got a job, yeah, teaching kindergarten and then the primary grades. And yeah, just like we mentioned before before the recording, it was kind of an enlightening moment for me because I realized it's not enough to just have a lesson
Yeah.
and start delivering it. It's you gotta get them engaged, or
Yeah.
else you could have the best lesson in the world, and it's just going to go in one ear and out the other, or not even in the ear. It'll just go
Yes.
right over them.
Right.
So yeah, I learned early on that front loading lessons with engagement, with interest, with facts, with value for the audience is primary and is paramount, and nothing really gets done without that. So that was, yeah, one of the biggest learning moments in my life, and I was very fortunate that I learned that at a young age.
Well, I got to tell you, God bless you, man, because man, I've got 4 children. Of course, they've all gone through kindergarten. So I've been a parent that has, dropped them off, been at a, maybe a presentation or something that they did in class as a kindergartner. And that was about like that half an hour to 2 hours was about all I could take, dude. So, I mean, you have a gift. You have a gift for not only obviously dealing at that level, but also you now deal with adults and you deal with communication on a much higher level. And there's a talent to that as well. Let's dive into the book. Let's talk about that. The effective presenter. Now, you have a formula that you have created, that you have designed, that walks people through the effectiveness of that and how they can do that on the professional stage. Walk us through that for us, if you don't mind, with our audience.
Sure. The entire thing's a little bit cumbersome, but I'm definitely happy to go through kind of an overview or some of
Yeah,
the early parts of it if I can.
absolutely.
So one thing that I've noticed, especially being in academia and also working with companies and organizations, I'm really fortunate to see both, see kind of like where the MBA students or where the students come from, what they're learning, and then also how that translates to real world when they go into their careers. One thing that's often overlooked is the communication component, and I found this time and time again. It's like they go into either their co-ops, or they go into their first year in their jobs, entry level, and it's assumed that they know how to speak in a meeting, or they know how to develop a presentation, or they know how to communicate with even in a team atmosphere. And
Yeah.
especially since the pandemic, some of them haven't had that in the last little while in person. So it's a little bit daunting for them. And on top of that, they don't have the phrases, they don't have the language, the vocabulary, and they're not really comfortable using it.
Yeah.
So I found that's one thing, that's one area lately that's been really lacking, and that's somewhere where I'm able to provide a lot of value and a lot of comfort, a lot of confidence to the younger folks coming up, because all of a sudden they have tools now. And when they have the tools and they've seen them and they've worked, then it's easier to gain that confidence and want to step into it again. So the first step of the my presentation framework that I developed was identify what your desired outcome is. You have to know in any situation going into it, what does a win look like for me here?
Mm-hmm.
And because again, often without that, people just go in, they step in and think, okay, I'll just start talking about my marketing plan, and I hope my boss approves it.
Yeah.
Or I'm going to pitch this, and I hope they find value in it. Right?
Yeah.
I call it like it's like an IKEA presentation. Here it is. Just build it yourself. Put it together in your mind, and if you find it out, then we win. But yeah, so ultimately, the best presentations, the communication that has the highest probability of success, has a clear outcome what you want. And then I can elaborate on that later. But the step two, which is closely in that, kind of like a 1A, 1B type thing, is the 1B is the audience. So you need to know who you're speaking to, and not just their names and their titles, but you need to know about them. So you need to know, how do they prefer to receive information? Do they like details only, or sorry, specific details, or do they like broad strokes? Do they like to go into a step-by-step process, or are they more focused on the outcomes and milestones? So the more you know about them, that'll really guide how you design and then how you deliver your presentation to be most effective.
Yeah.
And then the third cornerstone is the bottom layer of my pyramid that I built in the presentation framework. I call it presentation logistics, and that's knowing where you're presenting. So if you're going to be in a boardroom, or are you going to be, in my case, sometimes in an auditorium? Are you going to be in your office? So where's it going to take place? What do you have at your disposal? Are you going to have a screen, a projector? Are you going to not? Are you going to have to do it with a whiteboard? And then finally, how much time do you have, which is usually the most crucial and often overlooked. People think that they can design a presentation and fit it into a half hour, whatever they need. When that is the number one cause of presentation failures, is misjudging, or usually it's overloading how much information, and then you're rushing through it at the end, or you're not getting to your main points.
I really do love what we're talking about, because I'm in this period of life personally, where I'm looking at my presentations and my effectiveness in those presentations. So I think what you're saying right now is just hitting spot on everything that I feel is valuable in those presentations. As I was thinking about this, it's not only just in presentations that you're doing, like say on the corporate level, right? Just recently, I had two of our staff members come in and want to have a meeting with me. And as an owner of a company or a boss, or when you're HR or managing director, it's like you never really like it. Like, oh, great, now what, right? Like, what's the problem? What's the issue? Like,
Yeah.
you're just always kind of PTSD sticks in, and come to find out, both of them separately, but both of them wanted to have raises. And as I was thinking about your 3-step process, right? Know the outcome, right? Know the person that you're talking to, or the people you're talking to. And then what are the logistics in it, right? How do they like to be I guess, how much time are you have here? Are you going to be presenting live? Is it over Zoom? All these things. And I'm like, they didn't follow any of those sequences, right? And they didn't know how to communicate, and they didn't know how to, show me like why they should be getting a raise. And they didn't understand, obviously, like who they were talking to, in the sense of like, how do I like to have things presented? And I was like, man, I want them to read this book, so the next time that they are in a position of wanting something, right, such as a raise, well, now they know how the sequence is. So I look at your book and go, wow, it's not just for when you're trying to communicate to hundreds or thousands of people. It's literally when you're also communicating with other people, and you're wanting them to take action on something, or you're wanting something from them, possibly.
Absolutely. And what you just said kind of struck two thoughts that came to mind. Do you mind if we go off
Yeah,
on a
totally. Yeah. I
slight
love it,
tangent?
man. This is it, man. This is the jam of the podcast here.
All right, I might digress at some point, but
Yeah.
yeah. So on that note, I have a lot of experience. Actually, there's a lot of executives that I coach that are that make these types of requests, and it's always kind of a touchy area because you're not really sure. You want to keep the rapport, but at the same time, you want more income, or
Yeah.
more vacation, or more stock options, something.
Yes.
And so it's tough to kind of breach, or sorry, broach that conversation. But one thing, a strategy that's been proven, it's always effective, especially it's supported by the research, is not to say, I'm here, I am X and I want to be at Y. It's more to say, like, and I'm, or I'm at X pay and I want to get to Y pay, let's say. Instead of just saying that, like, I think I'm doing enough now to get to that amount. A much better strategy for anyone listening out there,
Yeah.
you should approach, again, once you understand, what's important to your boss, what do they value, how are you going to make their life easier or make them more profit or anything like that. Once you have that ironed out, then the second step is you want to approach them and say, look, I want to contribute more. Is there an opportunity? How can I contribute more? How can I do more? I have a couple suggestions. I can do this. I can do A or B or C. Do you have anything I can do?
Yeah.
And let them kind of take it from there. Because then if you're going to take on more responsibility subconsciously, like the undertones are, you're
Yeah.
going to be compensated for such, right?
Yes.
So that's a much more effective strategy. And that's like my first pitch, like pitch number one, when I'm working with those types. So
I love it, dude. That's exactly right. What, like, how can you bring value so that they see more value in you, right?
mhm.
And I think that's absolutely imperative. I'm just curious too. Uh, having your experience and the people that you're mentoring and coaching, and then of course, obviously, the groups that you're talking to over the last 3 years with COVID and now everything that had to happen with communication, right? Trying to communicate through Zoom, trying to communicate through the video. Like, man, it's so hard to communicate that two-dimensional when we're not three-dimensional anymore, right? Was there anything that you found to be really effective so that people could really be their best when they're having to do it via two-dimensional?
When it comes to like virtual presentations and even virtual meetings and building connections, there's are some tips and tricks you can do. A lot of them come down to setting yourself up for success. So when I was doing say a presentation to 200 people, and there was going to be an active chat, and there was going to be people unmuting themselves, and it was going to be chaos
Yeah.
online. I had two moderators. So one would help funnel the questions, and and the other one would make sure that everyone was muted and address any of those technical issues. And then simultaneously, throughout the presentation, there'd be spots broken up where I would address some of those questions periodically.
Mhm.
So developing kind of or setting yourself up for success in that regard is doable. But when it comes to building the rapport and building connections, which is something that I believe is, I think Simon Sinek said it, if you want to be successful with business, you have to be successful with people.
Mhm.
So knowing people is incredibly important. You really have to make that effort to get to know people
Yeah.
and to take an interest in them. And how are things going with your family? You have multiple kids. Are they involved in sports? Do you have to take them around now? What's that like? Like how busy are they? I bet you they're running around all the time. Like those types of conversations, that's what builds the rapport. And it's not as easy as in person because you're bumping into them. You can have a cup of coffee or what have you, but you really have to make the effort to show and to demonstrate that you're interested.
Yeah.
And then what you're doing every time is you're putting kind of a little bit of trust in the trust bank. You're putting some rapport in the rapport bank, and that's how things get built. And down the road, you need advice on something, you need help with something, you need anything. Like they're going to look on you favorably.
Was there anything that you did in order to run a successful online conversation or presentation for that matter? Like anything that like I've one thing that we do is like everybody has to have their camera on, right? Like I
Mhm.
need to know that you're there. I need to know that you're paying attention. So everybody turn their camera on, right? Like those types of little kind of hacks, but not everybody knows that, right? Is there anything that you did that you said, man, when I did these things, I got the most engagement and those presentations always went really well?
I'm trying to think of one or two blanket things. Sometimes I do so many things kind of automatically at this point that
Yeah.
I don't realize the value at the end. It's tough to separate it, but I do recommend using like, yeah, if you can get people to turn their
Right.
cameras on, that's amazing. Sometimes I run into the, where they're located geographically, they need it off for a better stream or a better, uh,
Sure.
but one thing you can do is you can make active use of the emojis and the icons so that, if they're following along, they understand, they just throw you a thumbs up on there. And then if someone doesn't throw you a thumbs up, you can call on them and
Yeah.
you can say, I noticed you're on, and then, oh no, I meant to have it on. You're like, okay, good. And then everyone knows that they're following along with you because you're paying attention,
I
right?
think that's great. Yeah, no, I think that's awesome. Be able to get them to do the thumbs up, participate in it. Hey, for everybody that just heard heard that and you agree with it, can I get a thumbs up on, on that message?
Exactly.
I think that's absolutely brilliant. Do you see now, so now we're getting on this other side. So we're getting back into communication in live events, right?
Mhm.
Is there anything that you do in your live events that gets the engagement that makes those presentations impactful, whether it's by you know the way that you stand or the way that you move or the things you don't do, like obviously you've got the formula, which is great, but are there any other additional things that you do that you see that presenters do that they do it well?
So yeah, one thing about me is I'm very much high energy and I'm very much enthusiastic. So when I'm up in front of people, I'm you hear it in my voice, like I'm happy to be there. Like I love it. Like frankly, like I was in Wyoming last month and I was, there's Wyoming's a big open area, but to me it's a
Yes.
new place and it's just
Yeah.
like this is great. I can get a steak later. This is amazing,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
like I'm just like I'm happy to be there and I'm happy to be working in corporate. Like I love what I do and I'm very energetic. So that's kind of innate.
Yeah.
But one thing I do lean on in advance to set me up for it, everything that I teach, every tip, every strategy, every approach, I always find a scenario, I'll think it through and find a scenario that applies to the audience that they have been in before and they
Mm,
didn't know what to do, or they might be in the future and then they'll know what to do. And I give them phrases and language and skills that they can use for those, whether it's sales, negotiation, conflict resolution, whatever it may be. And that's something that I find they get a lot of value because it's not enough to know, okay, there's a strategy out here and this is what it is. It's A plus B plus C equals D. But then how does that actually work in real life? Because we all know that some things don't translate. So as far as the content goes, I find that goes a long way, and it
mm,
also shows that I care, that they want to know it, right?
yeah.
Like because it's important to me that they get value too. But as far as my delivery skills, I really do make an effort before the presentation begins to start talking to people in the
Mm,
audience and start building those connections then and
gotcha.
ask like what do you do here, like, oh, do you work by independently or do you have a team, oh, are your team
Yeah.
members here too, oh, that's awesome. And once you start talking to them, it really does help them kind of open up. I call it lowering the drawbridge so that
Mm,
whatever I send through will go through, because if
yeah.
not, it's just going to end up in the moat, right?
That's good.
So
I love that visual. That's really good right there.
yeah, I spend time lowering the drawbridge with them so that I can get through and that they know, because the biggest thing is that I don't just want to be, corporate trainer they bring in because they
Yeah.
have to get their
Yeah.
L&D hours or whatever, right? Like I want to be someone who's going to stick with them and say, you know what, yeah, that Ryan guy, he actually had some good resources. I still use them. We should bring him back for something else. Like that's what's important to me, is that I can give you something you can use in the real world. So,
Well, and it goes back to I've been saying this to our leaders for quite a while, and we've really been trying to be intentional with this. Is that the relationship's built in the conversation, right? And when you have that and you're building that rapport, as you say, they're so much more open to listening to what you have to say. Because unfortunately, when you're given a speech, when you're presenting, it's a one-way street. They're interacting by maybe the way they clap, or they're interacting by when they laugh or raise their hand and stuff. But you're not having a two-way communication in the sense that they're actually talking back to you. So to be able to do that at the very beginning, then they see you up on stage and they're like, oh yeah, I really enjoyed my conversation with Ryan. I'm interested to hear what he has to say today. Right.
mhm,
And they're way more
exactly.
likely to do that. So I love that you do that. Now if you don't mind, I'd love to pivot a little bit because you also do a lot of coaching with CEOs and upper management.
Mhm.
Our our audience is entrepreneurs. It's people that they're fighting the good fight. They're out there in the daily grind. They're trying to get to that mountain peak, and a lot of them have gotten to that mountain peak, and then they realize like, oh crap, there's like 12 more that I need to go climb now, right? It's never
Hmm.
like, oh, I can just settle on this peak. It's like, no, I got to get off this peak as fast as I can because I got to go tackle those other ones. What are you seeing now? Like, what are you seeing now? Like, once again, as we're transitioning into a different marketplace, when we have, some challenges that really, at the end of the day, we have no control over most of the challenges that we're being faced with. What are you seeing has been the best for business owners and entrepreneurs? Whether it's mindset, whether it's like the health and the vitality, like what is it that you work on with them that's really helping them become their best selves?
Hmm. That's a difficult question. It's a good
Yeah,
question. It's just
it's a tough one, right?
it's
And maybe I'm
difficult because
asking for myself. Maybe there's a little bit of that too. So
it's I love entrepreneurs. So when I first started getting involved in coaching, it was like lit 100% hand to God. It was because my friends were in Silicon Valley. They had startup companies, and I started helping them with their pitches for investment. And that was over a decade ago now. And
wow.
that's what got me rolling in the whole coaching and training industry. Because before that, I was predominantly in education.
Yeah.
But so I love entrepreneurs, and I have the utmost respect for them because they're the only people in the world that they work 12, 14 hours a day so that they don't have to go to a job and work 8 for someone
Yes,
else,
exactly
right?
right. And make a
um
lot less money.
oh yeah, they are. Yeah, I have a lot of respect for entrepreneurs. I'm trying to think because they're all unique, because really what makes one successful might be the downfall of another. But ultimately, this entrepreneurs that I can tell you this, that are most successful, is they're not focused on becoming billionaires. They're not even focused on like changing the world, or some massive goal that they have to tell everyone that they are.
Mm,
The most effective entrepreneurs love the process. They love innovating. They love developing.
mm,
They love being able to have the freedom to create and produce things that they want to do, that
yeah.
they think will be of value. And because they love that so much, they want to improve their ability to do it. And that means hiring the right people around you to help you, right? Getting the right people on the bus, as they say, and
Yeah.
and then the right people in the right seats. And they also love maximizing their value. So the ones, I mean, it's not as common as I would love, I'd like. I was going to mention this earlier. One thing that I find when I'm doing a training session or a keynote speech is usually the CEO or the founder who will come to me and say, "Can you work with a couple of my guys? They need your help," or a couple of
Mhm.
my people. It's very seldom they'll come to me and say, "I need your help," right?
Yeah. So
Um,
true.
and then when down the road, then it's like, actually, can you fit me in for a couple sessions too?
Yeah.
But initially, yeah, it works with some of the other members of the team, and that's fine. But it's just kind of like a blind spot we all have, right? It's easy for us to spot it in others. But entrepreneurs, a lot of the I would say, when I do work with founders and CEOs of their own organizations, one thing I notice is a lot of them, they will self-sacrifice their own health in terms of nutrition, sleep. A lot of them don't sleep very much, or they sleep odd hours of the day. A lot of deadlines they feel like they have to hit, and oftentimes they don't make you don't make the best decisions when you're not rested,
Right.
and you end up creating more work for yourself. So I kind of spread shot about a bunch of them out there. I hope you could find some value in that. I
Yeah.
actually
No,
followed yeah.
I think it's great. Go ahead. I think your answer was fantastic and it was spot on. I think you hit a lot of a lot of the points that are so true when it comes to being an entrepreneur, right? We think less of ourselves, only in the sense that we're willing to work for less than minimum wage, if not free. We're gonna work 60 hours a week, if not more. We don't value our time because our time is meant to do this. I love how you talked about too is the ones that are successful don't have these "I'm going to go save the world" mentalities, because to a lot of a lot of entrepreneurs that we talk to is like, oh, I want to go change the world, and you're like, okay, that's great, but you're not even changing your life. Like you can't,
Mhm.
like you're not changing your family's life, you're not changing your community. They end up focusing on way too many things that they have an interest in, but they have no influence in, right?
Yes.
Their circle of interest is way bigger than their circle of influence. And I love how you're like, no, 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 the really good ones, their circle of interest is the size of their influence.
Absolutely. And I've seen, and this I can tell you 100%. I've seen dozens and dozens. I can't say hundreds, but I've seen
Yeah.
dozens of founders that have had successful exits. Founders that have gone to Series D, Series E, or been acquired, etc. They've been successful, and they can now choose whatever life they live. And a lot of them, the real founders, they choose to do something else
Yes.
because the ones that are successful, they enjoy the process. Like the journey is the destination for them. They don't do it for the money. They don't do it for, the accolades. They do it because they like the lifestyle. They're addicted to creating and developing and innovating, and they like that world. And I mean, part of success, the biggest part of success, is kind of identifying who you are.
Mm.
And once you identify who you are and what's valuable for you, then you can really find a way to leverage that and map that to whatever success that becomes.
And that's not an easy journey. That
No.
is hard, has a hard journey. And I'm so glad you brought that up, because we all have a tendency to kind of find our voice from other people, and we're not really being true and authentic. We kind of spoke about that a little bit off air as well too. So I'm so glad you brought that up. That's a really tough journey, but it is an important journey for you to find satisfaction, happiness, joy in your life when you can be your true authentic self and you're not trying to be somebody else.
Yeah, exactly, exactly, and not even not even claiming anyone's trying to be anyone else, but sometimes you don't know, right? Sometimes
Yeah.
it's, you're kind of on autopilot, or you're, the factory setting, we call it, or your default is, well, I should be an entrepreneur. Like
Yeah.
Elon Musk's an entrepreneur, right? Jeff Bezos, right? They look at them, right? That's what I should be.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, is that what's gonna make you happy?
Right.
And it's okay if it's not, right? Like that's the other thing I tell people all the time. Like it's okay if it's not. You don't, you get to write the game plan. You get to write the books. No one else is doing it for you. So
Yeah. Amen to that, dude. I love that. Great, great stuff. Well, Ryan, man, I really enjoyed this time. I know that once again, you've got the book, The Effective Presenter, The Winning Formula for Business Communication. He's got that right there for those of you that are watching us on YouTube. And then you've also got a podcast called Professionally Speaking Podcast. Just give the audience a little bit of what that entails and why they should follow that.
sure, yeah. So the speaking podcast, like pretty much everything I do, is kind of born out of necessity and out of demand. A lot of my clients, they wanted to learn more about different industries and how different professionals use communication to navigate their careers and to find success. So I have a different professional on. Usually, I try to do two a month, and we discuss their success, whether it's in law or whether it's in healthcare, whether it's in construction. So that we have all different sorts of professionals, and discussing to them what types of communication they use, what situations they find themselves in,
Mhm.
and what do they find is most effective. So they're really great at detailing and outlining how they use their words, how they position themselves, and how they find success.
Awesome, man. Love it. All right. You guys, you're listening to this. You gotta find that. You gotta track that down, because once again, we all want to be great communicators, because the more that we can communicate in a greater way, hey, the more successful our businesses are going to be, and the more successful we will be personally as well, too. Where can we find the book, and where can we follow you?
So the book is everywhere. It's on best prices on Amazon for some reason,
Okay.
but it's available everywhere. It's also available in audiobook, Audible, and everywhere audiobooks are sold as well. So that's where all that is. If you want to get a hold of me, I'm very active on LinkedIn. I'm on Instagram as well, Ryan J. Warriner. So yeah, happy to please reach out. Happy to chat. Happy to see if we can help get you where you want to go.
Love it, man. Wow, we appreciate you being on, brother. It's been awesome to have you, and just love getting to know you. Love getting to know your heart and what you're doing to make the world a better place.
The feeling's mutual, my friend.
Awesome. All right, you guys. Hey, listen, we're always looking at trying to bring you value. And I think Ryan did that today. No doubt about it. I am excited about this book. There's no doubt I'm getting a copy. And then, of course, the podcast. Anytime that we can get things coming into our ears that are helping us become better leaders, become better communicators, you got to take advantage of it. So go follow the man, the myth himself. So, all right, love you guys. Have a fantastic rest of your day, and we'll talk to you soon.